Okay, that's a nice memory. Be involved and pay attention. Okay, I have to remember that. It's great to be here. Good to see you all, everybody that's involved in supporting this amazing industry. It's nice to hear the Secretary speak about his optimism about agriculture. Organic agriculture is always a very, very optimistic bunch. We complain, farmers complain about the weather, complain about the markets, but it's really a pleasure to work in the organic community with so much positive energy and so much optimism about the future. So thanks to Laura and OTA for inviting me and giving me a few minutes to talk about the work of the AMS's National Organic Program. First, I want to say that I'm honored to serve the organic community. My job is to protect the integrity of the USDA organic seal and the organic standards. The NOP is a regulatory program responsible now for a $43 billion industry, huge industry. It's just with a very small staff. It's not $19 million, it's only $9 million budget, which has been the same for the last 3 years. So as the industry continues to grow, our budget has continued to be the same. But we continue to do very important work to provide that oversight and integrity in the whole system. There's over 31,000 certified organic operations around the world. You also have to understand that many of the foreign operations are grower groups that may consist of hundreds or thousands of growers. So by our count, there's 500,000 organic farmers around the world that are certified under the USDA organic regulations. And they operate in over 100 countries. So our scope and our responsibility is very broad. It's not just within the US, it's also ensuring that all products that are imported, all organic products imported into the US meet the US organic standards. So we protect that integrity through a lot of the work that you do. The certifiers are a critical part of this, but we also work with state departments of agriculture, foreign governments, and the industry as well in terms of providing input and complaints to help us to identify those areas that need enforcement or need improvement. Having a thorough and complete organic control system is essential to maintain the health of the organic sector. The regulatory work of the NOP supports all farmers' ability to prosper in the organic marketplace. It ensures a level playing field, fair competition, achievable standards. We try to have a reasonable, rational, and practical certification process so that everyone, if they comply with the requirements, can succeed in the organic marketplace. You have built a very prosperous organic sector, one that provides jobs, economic opportunity for new and beginning farmers, and premium prices for many farmers, including smallholders in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And it does that while protecting biodiversity, improving soil and water quality, and providing a path to a sustainable future. So you have lots and lots of things to be proud of. The world's organic market is now valued at over 80 billion US dollars. International organic trade is expanding to meet the demands of the organic market. The US sources many organic products and ingredients from foreign countries, as well as supplies organic products to many of our trading partners. In order to support the trade in organic products and to ensure the integrity of organic products, my agency, the Agricultural Marketing Service, in partnership with the Foreign Agricultural Service and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, have established equivalency arrangements with Canada, the 28 countries within the European Union, Switzerland, Japan, and Korea. So it's really more than just 5 countries. It's 28 plus 4, so that's, what, 32. So it's a pretty good, 32, not just 5. Because our agreement with the European Union is all the member states that are within the European Union. So that's a very broad agreement, joins the 2 largest organic markets together in an equivalency arrangement. So these arrangements, as it has been said, lessen the burden of inspection and certification while ensuring that high organic standards are met. They provide simpler processes for all producers, including small farms, to participate in the global organic market. But there are some additional benefits of these arrangements that I'd like to highlight. One is that equivalency arrangements allow participating governments to focus their resources on compliance with organic standards rather than expending resources on verifying multiple requirements that meet the same objectives. Government and certifier resources can then be used for market surveillance, investigations, and enforcement, rather than duplicative and redundant processes that add no added value to the process. For example, prior to establishing the Canadian equivalency arrangement, NOP conducted dozens of accreditation audits in Canada, and we investigated complaints for alleged violations in Canada. Now it's the Canadian government that's responsible for accreditation and oversight of certifiers and enforces the Canadian organic standards in Canada. This frees up NOP resources for other work. Another benefit that we've seen through these equivalency arrangements is collaborative audits. We've conducted them with the European Union. Through this collaboration, AMS auditors and European Food and Veterinary Service auditors have audited organic control systems in Canada, Switzerland, and India. So these are joint audits that we conduct with our partners in Europe. These audit teams learn from each other regarding audit techniques, they share their observations and findings, and they improve the overall oversight of the foreign government's organic control systems. So AMS has established 5 or 32, depending upon how you count them, organic equivalency arrangements since 2009. We've been working with Mexico over the last few years on a potential additional equivalency arrangement. Mexico's organic regulations are in the process of being implemented. Senacica, which is Mexico's competent authority, they've accredited 9 certifying agents, and those certifiers have certified hundreds of operations in Mexico under the Mexican organic regulations. AMS has provided extensive technical assistance to Senacica as they've set up their program. We've provided workshops in Mexico, and we've had Senacica organic officials observe our NOP accreditation audits, both here in the US and also in Mexico. This past March, we conducted a full assessment of the Mexican organic control system. This is a normal part of our process when we enter into equivalency discussions is we do a desk audit of their system, and then we go on site and do a full assessment of their organic control system. We found that Senacica has fully implemented their regulations and has a quality control system in place. The system includes thorough accreditation processes and a comprehensive compliance and enforcement system that includes market surveillance and complaint investigative procedures. So they are well on their way of implementing a full and effective organic control system in Mexico. And as we continue to work with Mexico on a potential equivalency arrangement, AMS and Senacica have agreed to establish what we're calling a joint organic compliance committee. This committee has 2 objectives. One is strengthening monitoring and controls over the organic sector, and 2 is collaboration on enforcement and compliance. Some of the committee's activities will include creating a tracking system of complaints and significant findings and non-compliances that are found and the actions that are taken. Second, the U.S. and Mexico is organizing equivalency agreement workshops for U.S. and Mexican certification bodies that are operating in Mexico to listen to their views and determine the need for training and technical assistance to kind of understand some of the challenges that certifiers have in Mexico, and then providing the support that they need to ensure integrity in the Mexican organic sector. Third, monitoring trends in noncompliance with focus on specific regions and commodities. Fourth, providing additional resources to protect inspectors and certifiers that are operating in Mexico, including providing them with best practices, training, and security information and support for them to conduct unannounced inspections and inspections in areas that have some security concerns. Fifth, establish an interim sampling program for certification bodies with testing protocols and reporting to be shared with accreditation authorities. Mexico is already well underway in terms of implementing a pilot testing program for pesticide residues. And then finally, within 6 months, Mexico and the United States plan to implement the use of import or transaction certificates for each shipment of organic product to provide additional verification of certification. This is a normal part of our equivalency arrangements, that all imports that come into the U.S. under equivalency arrangements, except with Canada, require that they be accompanied by an NOP import certificate. So with Mexico, we're planning to implement that within the next 6 months for these import certificates. So finally, in regards to these import certificates, NOP import certificates are required at the current time for all organic imports from Japan, Korea, and 29 European countries, so that's the 28 in the European Union plus Switzerland. And AMS has found that these import certificates provide additional verification and assurance that imported organic products meet the USDA organic regulations. Import certificates are issued by accredited certifiers or authorized certifiers under equivalency arrangements to verify that specific shipments of organic products meet the terms of the equivalency arrangements. Canada and Mexico, their plans and their control systems are to implement import certificate requirements by the end of this year. And AMS is in the process of developing a proposed rule that will be out for public comment to require import certificates for all organic imports. And yes, we hope to have that published later this year. So this initiative to require import certificates is just one example of how USDA continues to prioritize strengthening the organic regulatory system. The proposed rule on organic livestock and poultry practices is an example of how AMS is proposing to strengthen the organic livestock standards. That is currently open for public comment. We really look forward to your comments on the organic livestock and poultry proposed rule. It is a proposed rule, so we're looking for many comments with details and justification so we can make the final rule to best serve the organic sector as possible. So it is critical to the success of the organic sector that a robust, thorough, and effective organic control system is in place with enforceable standards. It protects organic farmers and handlers and ensures consumers that when they buy organic, they are getting the organic products that they are paying for. So thanks to all of you for your continued support of organic integrity, and I think I have a few minutes for questions. Thanks.
Can you wait for a microphone?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure, thanks. I've never been told I needed one before, but I guess I do. A quick question. We've heard from a couple different sources that organic grain, especially corn being shipped out of Turkey, has been being scrutinized by the USDA, in part because they think it's coming from countries outside of Turkey. Is there any comment or thought on that with you mentioning on the certificates?
Well, Turkey's not part of the European Union, so they would not be would not be required to come in with an NOP import certificate. So there is a lot of organic grain coming in from Turkey and Romania. So we have heard some questions about the volume of product coming in. We are taking a look at that, but we don't have any specific additional information to provide. If you have any specific information that you can provide, you can either, the best way to get that to us is through our compliance and enforcement program, NOP compliance at ams.usda.gov.
Hi, Miles. There's been a lot of talk about trade today, and at the certifier training this year, the NOP certifier training, the idea of plurilateral equivalence arrangements was discussed, and I wondered if there was any further movement on that.
Yeah, so we do have a number of these bilateral arrangements. There's a lot of countries that are interested in forming an equivalency arrangement with AMS, with USDA. We have interest from Chile, Peru, Costa Rica, New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan. So there's a very long list and a long waiting list. We are also working with Taiwan pretty, I'm not sure I would use the word effectively, but we're working, we've been working with Taiwan for a while. We have an export arrangement with Taiwan, so USDA organic products can get into Taiwan. So we've had discussions with the European Union in particular about the fact that we each have a lot of these bilateral trade arrangements, and they take a fair amount of resources. We've been sharing information from these collaborative audits that we've conducted to assess countries' control systems. But we're thinking long term, what can be done to create another system besides just bilateral trade arrangements. Because trade does not just occur between two countries, there's a lot of products that will go to a third country, or will come to one country and then get exported back out as a processed product, an ingredient, another. So you all understand that would be, trade is complex. So there is some discussion about what would a multilateral, or what we're calling a plurilateral type of organic agreement look like, and that's very preliminary. There's some ideas that have been shared between the EU and the U.S., and we're looking at further discussions. Switzerland's very interested in these discussions of how we could set up that kind of system to build on the current equivalency arrangements that we have. But if you look at the U.S. has the equivalency arrangements. We have 3 recognition agreements. We have export arrangement with Taiwan. So that's already a lot of complexity. The EU has, I think, 13 to 15 separate recognitions. Their type of equivalency arrangement. They just signed a new one with Chile within the last few weeks. There needs to be long-term some other system that we look at to enable organic products to have a little more flexibility in the international market. So we have some ideas, and we'll be discussing those further with our partners. Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Miles. Richard Matthews, Western Organic Dairy Producers Alliance. We're curious as to the status on the final rule. Where is it in the clearance process for the origin of livestock? And secondly, what is the status of the proposed rule for zinc sulfate?
Okay, origin of livestock, we're working on the final rule, and we plan to have that published by the end of the year. And then for zinc sulfate, Paul, that's probably within the national list docket, so that's being worked on, and that should come out as a proposed rule later this year, right? In the fall. Yeah, that's later this year. Yeah, later this calendar year, we'll say that.
Hi, Miles.
Just for clarification, originally in the work plan, the final rule was scheduled for this month for the origin of livestock. So you're saying we're actually pushed back closer to the end of December?
It's still being written. It has not gone to OGC for review, so we're committed to getting it finalized this year, this calendar year. It's got a ways to go. Not coming out next month, no.
Hi, Miles. Miles, hello. Thanks so much for you and NOP and NOSB's great work. We really appreciate you guys holding the line. There was a lot of discussion at the research conference on Monday about alternatives, specifically copper, and everybody's desire to get more biologicals out there. I wanted to know your opinion on that. I know in EU, they limit the amount of copper, and they're really pushing biologicals. We were really happy what happened with antibiotics, that a lot of research started developing around alternatives, biological alternatives to antibiotics in the palm industry. So I think that your office can push research related to alternatives. So I was wondering if you can comment on that.
Yeah, I think when we talk about materials, we have to always realize that the organic standards require organic growers to use preventative practices first, and they can only use pest control materials on the national list if those preventative practices are not effective. So the organic system is all about building that biology and having preventative practices in place, and if those things fail, then you can use these inputs like copper. So in terms of developing alternatives, we certainly support and get information to the Agricultural Research Service and NIFA about the needs for research in the organic sector. The National Organic Standards Board has a document that they recommend certain research priorities, and that's shared with NIFA and with ARS. And then they use that to provide funding for those types of research actions. So you talked about antibiotics. So with the antibiotics, the loss of antibiotics for tree fruit production with streptomycin and tetracycline, I think this year may be a year to really understand the impact of that. I think the last couple of years, from what I understand, in the Northwest at least, it's been not very fire blight friendly. It's been not a bad year for fire blight, but this year is turning out to be quite a bad year for fire blight. So it would be interesting to see how many acres of organic pears in particular, and some of the more susceptible varieties of apples, may be getting out of organic production because of the loss of that material. But that's what the National Organic Standards Board did not renew that material, so it's no longer allowed to be used in organic production.
Miles, you mentioned looking at the competency of equivalency by the competent authority or in the systems in place. How does the USDA deal with, if it happens, the idea of corruption in other countries? Do you look at it? Do you have a sense of it, or do you evaluate the likelihood or the unlikelihood of corruption? And then the other question is, in looking at what from the outsider's perspective perceives an unusually high amount of freedom of information request for the department, how does that affect your ability to do enforcement and balance your budget? Because the enforcement has been a shortage of trying to move the complaints through in a timely manner, for those of us that want to see enforcement.
Okay, so that was two questions. The first one, what do we look at? Is there corruption in foreign countries? When we do the equivalency arrangement, when we do the maintenance of those equivalency arrangements by doing our assessments, we do a peer review. We're looking at the whole set of government control systems that are in place, and it's evaluated under an international standard, 17,011. So there's a rigorous audit process that involves, it's similar to how we audit certifiers, but you're looking at a different level of an organization. So we're looking at their accreditation system, we're looking at their compliance and enforcement system, and all those things have to be fully effective, and they also have to comply with 17,011. So when we do assessments, just like when we do audits of certifiers, we find things. There's findings and observations. You can see the audit reports that we've done on these foreign countries that identify the types of findings. And then the partner country that we work with, then they address those findings in some manner. So it is a very thorough assessment from top to bottom, very comprehensive in terms of ensuring that their control system is effective. In terms of FOIA, yes, we do get a lot of requests for information under the Freedom of Information Act. It's our responsibility to provide information to the public that is public records. We have I think we have almost 20 open Freedom of Information requests in. We have a few appeals, so we provide those records, and then the party is not satisfied that all the records were provided, or that we redact some information under the law. So that's not, they don't agree with that, so they appeal those records. I think we have about 6 appeals, and then we've also recently gotten a number of lawsuits that we haven't provided the records in a timely enough fashion, or not enough of them. So we currently have almost 4 staff members in a very small program. We have about 45 staff in the National Organic Program that are currently working on responding to Freedom of Information requests. So it's very time-consuming, but it's our responsibility to provide that information. Okay, on that somber note, I think we're good? Yeah, okay, thank you very much.